My business partner left me to rot. Now I'm ready to destroy his empire. I can still remember the day that everything collapsed into shambles. It was the day Brandon ditched me, the day my life fell apart in ways I never dreamed of. We had been working together for almost 10 years and had turned our tech company into a successful enterprise. It all began with a late night, endless coffee, and an idea, as well as tempered frustration and a belief that we could synergize all our efforts to make drastic changes to the world, which we indeed did for a while. But Brandon was not satisfied. He decided that he wanted more power, control, and money, and was more than happy to stab his erstwhile business partner in the back limitless amount of times to get it. I didn't see it coming, which is baffling, because looking back on it, I should have. When it happened, I was far too busy keeping the ship afloat to notice the warning signs. Brandon was becoming increasingly private. He started taking more meetings by himself, making more decisions independently. There were relationships he was building that I wasn't a part of, and he was making deals that he had not briefed me on. But I trusted him. He was my partner after all, right? All of that quickly changed. From what should have been a routine board meeting, it turned into a disaster. We had recently landed an incredible investment deal that was going to elevate the company, and I was eager to get it over the line. It felt like the cherry on top of everything else we had put effort into, so I made a point to get to the office early. But when I arrived at the conference room, it was evident something was off. All the board members were present, but in stark contrast to how they usually acted, they seemed dispassionate, uninterested. Brandon sat at the head of the table with the distinct expression of someone who's in control, his signature warm grin replaced with a more sinister look as he measured the room. My stomach was already twisting before I sat down at the table. "Michael," Brandon began in low tones. With little effort, I was convinced I sensed some annoyance in his voice, which was new to me. "We need to talk." I grimaced. "Could you please elaborate?" After sharing a glance with the board members, Brandon turned toward me. "We are resolved that it is time for a shift. The firm is heading to a new level, and you don't feature in the plans." I was staring at him, trying to rationalize what was being said. "What are you talking about? This company belonged to all of us." "Cold," he said. "Time changes everything. We want to move on, which means we need a fresh visionary leader. To be honest, you are dragging us down." "Holding them back?" My incredulousness resonated in the air. When the public face of the business was chasing flamboyant investors, I kept the company afloat. I was the one burning the midnight oil, who formulated the technology that transformed our company into a household name. And now, he wanted me to exit? "This is preposterous," I yelled. "You have no authority evicting me from my own company." Without a hint of hesitation, Brandon replied that he had all the authority. "You are off the board, effective immediately. We have already voted." I started trembling. It was as if the chamber I was sitting collapsing. "What happened to the board? They agreed to this too?" Confused, I turned towards them. I searched for anyone who would stand up and dispute. I was still looking for a hint of any form of conflict within their replies, but there was none. Only silence remained. Everything is set and done. As painful as it was, I needed to accept their decision. "This cannot be legal," was the first thing that popped into my head. Surely, no firm that holds a single ounce of decency would try to pull the stunt of stealing the life's work of half the co-founders of the firm. Coming across like a headless chicken ready to squawk, I stood up with no consideration for my flaws. "You people cannot do this. I am a co-founder of the firm." While displaying contentment all over, Brandon stood up coincidentally at the same time while Mike spoke. "Trust me, it is perfectly legal. We made certain advancements to ensure that. It has always been there, and there is no denying that you signed the partnership agreement. We are in control of your removal from the firm." I wanted to scream the paraphrase of "you are insane," but all I ended up doing was holding my palms together. Everything he just said was laying out the cold, hard truth. Trusting Brandon had served me poorly. Sure, I signed those dubious documents, but I never expected him to chop me out of the organization that we painstakingly constructed pixel at a time together. "Get out," he said, all sense of emotion gone. "You're done here." These next few days felt like a fever dream. I was still in shock, attempting to cope with a painful betrayal. I called a lawyer and attempted a counterattack, but it was futile. Brandon had everything locked down tight. The company was officially his, and there was nothing I could do to put a stop to it. He had taken advantage of me, sucked every last drop of potential from me, and when I no longer served a purpose, I was discarded. That, however, was not the worst part. A week later was when things started to go downhill. I was notified by one of the investors we had worked with, and they sent me an email. This email was congratulating me on my new venture and providing me good luck on my departure from my job. One of the things that shocked me was the email was attached to a press release. That press release was the one Brandon sent out to the media, which stated that I decided to step down from my position to pursue other opportunities. I was pissed beyond belief. This man whom I had trusted stripped away everything I worked for in a single breath. I thought I had emerged from one of the most trying parts of my life when in fact the most difficult aspect was still to come. I had lost my wife, my career was left in shambles, and now the world was led to believe that I chose to build a life for myself free from the corporate world. They had devoured the story spoon-fed to them by the media. Soon enough, my phone began to vibrate and was bombarded with messages from family, business partners, and friends. All were wondering the same thing. What was the reason you moved away from the company? I couldn't provide them a response. How is one able to put into words the immense amount of betrayal executed by the one person who they placed their entire belief on? Brandon had successfully ripped apart and taken away everything from me. The company, my reputation, all of it was now turned into a simple footnote in the empire we built together. I felt like nothing but an angry, lost person that was completely humiliated. The company I had built all my life was my identity. And now I had a life that had nothing. I spent weeks relying in despair while being absolutely clueless of my next move. Falling into an unfathomable state of sadness, the world found a way to dip into a suffocating fog, one which I thought I had put on, making it hard to breathe. But then came the change. Somewhere around midnight, I was caught up staring at my notebooks, blueprints, the designs, and ideas which contained the next steps of a technology being built for the firm. Ideas that took me years to practically perfect and are now being profited by Brandon. I would have flipped that page for ages, yet internally, a part of me was snapped. It is absolutely insane to me how easy it is to get away with such acts, and as I sit here, I am dead set on doing everything in my power to stop him. This entire time, Brandon had control. Sure, he might have had the upper hand, but he had not taken my mind, that creative essence of my figure. Soaked in darkness, I felt a surge of newfound strength and power that determined the primal side of me. This allowed a sense of new focus and power that took over. Brandon thought he won, only to face reality where it is inevitable to conclude that I was never truly finished or buried. I wasn't dead. I was coming back. If you're not following our channel, you might never see it again. But if you're subscribed, congratulations. You'll always have access to the most interesting stories at your convenience. The change of my perspective was gradual at first, but it intensified stronger each day. After Brandon betrayed me, for weeks I had been angry and helpless. But now, there was something different. It was not just anger anymore, but a resolve. I was going to rebuild and along the way, take him down. I was starting with taking the first necessary steps towards order. While I was feeling the self-pity for too long, Brandon was making profits off everything we had worked together. The company had become my everything, but I had to stop it. Control it. Not anymore. My first step was reaching out to contacts, friends, and even former coworkers who were not fooled by Brandon's narratives. The initial conversations were a bit uneasy. Most of them had been fed the narrative that I had stepped down from my position in the company to go after other opportunities. The moment I decided to start sharing my side of the story, I noticed the truth was beginning to seep in. People responded in many different ways. Some were shocked, while some were sympathetic towards my actions. However, a handful of people who were familiar with both Brandon and I were completely unfazed. They had witnessed how Brandon had been working, especially during the months leading up to the betrayal. The secretive meetings and the deals done behind closed doors suggested that he was desperate to have control over everything. In hindsight, it is fair to say that it was so clear. He was working on this for a long time. With each passing day, I started noticing a change and receiving support from areas I had least expected it. Former employees contacted me expressing how they had predicted the situation way before I had, and how Brandon had started to take control and make decisions in my absence. Sympathy also poured in from investors who had previously backed out of deals with Brandon. Some of them even dared to suggest that they would consider working with me had I chosen to start something new. That was a beginning. But, as I had anticipated, it wasn't quite sufficient. I was sitting at my desk one night, contemplating the old blueprints and designs I had slaved over for years. It was clear to me that the reapable tech Brandon was currently reaping the profits from was indeed mine. The evidence was right there with me. Notes, emails, documents, and everything else which validated his concepts. The concepts, which were single-handedly making him millions. But the idea of yet another tedious, long legal wrangle was enough to make me gag. Brandon was still breathing when I built the lawsuit, but I needed to hit him where it hurt the most, his empire. The foundation of Brandon's fortune was my ideas, and unlike him, I assumed he rationally thought out everything. In his haste, he had vastly overestimated control and had presumed I was too shattered to retaliate. What he forgot, however, was that I understood the intricacies of business much more than he ever could. I was the one who built the blueprints and the systems and the technology. The entire business busting down was merely a choice I needed to make. But the company was not going to willingly go under. I had to work smarter. Instead of bringing havoc to Brandon's empire, I needed to outsmart him. That meant devising a strategy that not only ruined his reputation, but let me reclaim what was rightfully mine. It hit me out of nowhere. As I gazed at the designs, the very solution I needed came in the form of the technology one had created, yet to be complete. Yes, Brandon did steal the foundation, but I was working on something completely revolutionary. It was entrepreneurial in nature and poised to take the company to greater heights. Better yet, if I independently developed it, it would far exceed what my collaborators and I had built. And let me tell you, the day I deemed fit to bring it all to life, Brandon would be exposed to the world for the fraud he is. I was intent to single-handedly dismantle the company, and that is exactly what led me to take action. While there were challenges, the efforts put in while technologically savvy paid off sixfold. It took some to get used to working alone after collaborating for so long, but once I got into the zone, I was paced in a healthy rhythm. So I went ahead, found and rented a single office space, hired a couple of former employees of Brandon's empire that I trusted, and started working on the next stage of the technology with the few engineers in my contact. Every day felt like a new challenge, as I was constantly haunted by what I had lost to Brandon, and how effortless it had been for him to take everything away from me. However, the moment I was teetering on the edge of surrender, I recalled the press release where Brandon stated that I had voluntarily left, and that sent my blood racing. All of the work I was putting in was paying off, as my new technology was beginning to take shape. Month after month passed, the relentless work was beginning to exhaust me, but everything was finally coming together. It was truly unforgiving labor, and with each breakdown I faced, there was a storm of lies and deception without any hope of truth in sight. My project was not only better than what Brandon had stolen from me, but there was nothing better than what I was creating. I understood that once the product was launched, there would cease to be any obstacles in its way. With all of the work I put forth, it was emerging as an industry-transforming invention unlike anything the world had witnessed before. Since this was a revolutionary improvement being planned, I knew there would be no stopping the work. Brandon thought he had gotten rid of me forever, but everything that I did throughout this period was to make certain that the world learned the truth. Not only was I setting out to establish newfound technology, but even if that name and legacy of mine were to be claimed, it had the power to change everything in the sector, let alone giving me back my reputation. The harder I tried to forget, the clearer my path grew. While I kept a low profile during the time, Brandon enjoyed the success of the company he had stolen, and everything seemed fine for him. But I knew it was only a matter of time before my impending blow put him down. The tech world is unforgiving, and what goes up must come crashing down eventually. As I prepared for the launch of my new product, I went ahead and gathered evidence to expose Brandon. Over the course of the company, I had stored emails, contracts, and design drafts in case they were needed, and once the truth surfaced, there was no denying the web of lies that Brandon had constructed. But this time, I had no intention of letting the legal system take charge. I wanted the world to see who Brandon actually was, and his public reputation is what I wanted to destroy. My new technology was the perfect platform for me to get everything done. The launch day had finally arrived. I had spent months on it, building my new company from scratch with a hardworking team. The event was simple, no extravagant investors, no media extravaganza like Brandon's. But it was my launch, and that's all that mattered. As I stood center stage, prepared to reveal the product that would transform the industry, I felt waves of pride wash over me. This is what drove me to work endlessly to reclaim everything Brandon dished out. The first step was to take a deep breath for my presentation, which bottled up the stark details of technology and explained how it would differentially change the energy efficiency and sustainability fight forever. The response was immediate. People were thrilled. This isn't just a miniature improvement over what Brandon had. This was completely new, a revolution. But this was just the beginning. Your excitement is justified. There is so much more to come. During the closing remarks of my presentation, I stopped to take a glance at the audience as thumping hearts filled the silence. I waited for this moment, the moment where I boldly disclosed the skeletons in my closet. I'd like to say one more thing. My voice was unflinching. This technology stems from years and years of devout devotion and careful craftsmanship, but it has also stemmed from betrayal. I once had a business partner, someone I had trusted. Someone who, without my consent, came up with an entire empire based on my ideas. The silence in the room was deafening. That partner was Brandon Hale, who happens to be the CEO of Hale Technologies. He forced me out of the company we built together, made a ton of money out of my designs, and, to add insult to injury, claimed to have done it all out of his own effort. I'm here today to claim what is rightfully mine. This technology and innovation is a reminder that I have not yet met my demise, and now, everyone will know the truth. The power of the response was brilliant. Reporters from the audience began to write notes. The emergence of camera flashes was almost blinding, and every single whisper in the room moved like a raging fire. The curtain had been pulled back. The truth was finally here. I had shifted the power to my control, and there was nothing Brandon was capable of doing to stop it. In the upcoming days, the consequences were dire. News agencies began catching steam, and hours later Brandon's name was trending, but not as a tech-savvy CEO. Instead, he was plastered across headlines as a $2 billion scam artist. His business had a mass investor dropout, his stocks nosedived, and employees started to leave the firm in multitudes. No matter how many times Brandon tried to resist claiming, he could no longer refute the power of the proof. Obviously, these were followed by legal actions. He tried filing a countersuit for slander, but the facts worked against him. Hale Technologies got destroyed by its false narratives, and the entire industry turned on him. I was able to easily launch my new venture, and the innovative tech I created was awarded instantly. Now I had gotten the respect I had worked tirelessly for, and alongside that, the recognition was gracious. Most importantly, I was able to restore my sense of self and purpose. I had died the day Brandon left, but I rose from the ashes much stronger. His castle built on lies and manipulative power has finally come crashing down.